Alright, guys, last chapter of Ivan Turgenev's First Love, chapter 22. 3 or 4 years passed. I just left the university and was not quite sure what I ought to be doing, which door to knock at, and in the meantime wasting my time in complete idleness. One fine evening I met Maidanov in the theater. He had contrived to get married and enter government service, but I found him quite unchanged. He still alternated between the same foolish transport followed by equally sudden fits of depression. You know, he said to me incidentally, that Madame Dolsky is here. What Madame Dolsky? Certainly you've not forgotten the former Princess Zaziekin. You remember we were all in love with her. Yes, and you too, you remember, in the country, near the Neskuchny. Is she married to Dolsky? Yes. And is she here in the theater? No, in Petersburg. She came here a day or two ago. She is going abroad. What is her husband like, I asked. Oh, a very nice fellow and quite well off. Colleague of mine in Moscow. You understand, after that episode, you must know all about that. Maidanov gave a meaning smile. It was not easy for her to find herself a suitable parti, and it did not end there. But with her brains, nothing is impossible. Do go and see her. She will be very pleased to see you. She was more lovely than ever. Maidanov gave me Zenaita's address. She was staying in the Hotel Demuth. Old memories began to stir within me. I promised myself to pay a visit to my flame on the very next day, but various things turned up. A week passed and then another, and when I made my way to the Demuth and asked for Madame Dolsky, I was told that she had died 4 days before, quite suddenly in childbirth. Damn, it's fucked up. I felt a sudden stab in my heart. The thought that I could have seen her and did not and would never see her again. This bitter thought buried itself in me with all the force of an unanswerable reproach. She is dead, I repeated, staring dully at the porter and making my way noiselessly into the street, wandered off without knowing where I was going. The past suddenly rose and stood before me. So that was to be the final answer to it all. So that was the final goal towards which this young life, all glitter and ardor and excitement, went hurrying along. Those were my thoughts as I conjured up those beloved features, those eyes, those curls, in the narrow box in the dank underground darkness. Here, not far from me, who was still living, and perhaps only a few steps from where my father lay. And as those thoughts poured in upon me, and my imagination was busily at work, tidings of death heard I from lips unfilling. Unmoved, I listened. Ran in my head. O youth, you go your way heedless, uncaring as if you owned all the treasures of the world. Even grief elates you, even sorrow sits well upon your brow. You are self-confident and insolent, and you say, I alone am alive, behold. Even while your own days fly past and vanish without trace and without number, and everything within you melts away like wax in the sun, like snow, and perhaps the whole secret of your enchantment lies not indeed in your power to do whatever you may will, but in your power to think that there was nothing you will not do. It is this that you scatter to the winds, gifts which you could never have used to any other purpose. Each of us feels most deeply convinced that he has been too prodigal of his gifts, that he has a right to cry, oh, what could I have not done if only I had not wasted my time? And here am I. What did I hope? What did I expect? What rich promise did the future seem to hold out to me, when with scarcely a sigh, only a bleak sense of utter desolation, I took my leave from the brief phantom, risen for a fleeting instant of my first love? What has come of it all, of all that I had hoped for? And now, when the shades of evening are beginning to close in upon my life, what have I left that is fresher, dearer to me than the memories of that brief storm that came and went so swiftly one morning in the spring? But I do myself an injustice even then in those light-hearted days of my youth. I did not close my eyes to the mournful voice which called to me, to the solemn sound which came to me from beyond the grave. I remember how several days after that on which I had learnt of Zenaita's death, I myself, obeying an irresistible impulse, was present at the death of a poor old woman who lived in the same house with us, covered with rags, lying on bare boards with a sack for a pillow. Her end was hard and painful. Her whole life was spent in a bitter struggle with daily want. She had had no joy, had never tasted the sweets of happiness. Surely she would become death with gladness, its deliverance, its peace. Yet so long as her frail body resisted obstinately, her breast rose and fell in agony under the icy hand that was laid upon it. So long as my strength was left within her, the little old woman kept crossing herself, kept whispering, Lord, forgive me my sins. And not until the last spark of consciousness had gone did the look of fear, of the terror of death vanish from her eyes. And I remember that there by the deathbed of that poor old woman, I grew afraid for Zenaida. And I wanted to say a prayer for her, for my father, and for myself. Lord, forgive me of my sins. Anyway, y'all, it's the end. It's the end of Ivan Turgenev's First Love. Yeah, I can see why Dostoevsky, why they're saying Ivan Turgenev was probably the one of the greatest authors of, one of the greatest storytellers of all of Russia in the 19th century. It's amazing, man. It's amazing. Peace.